Hey, Colette, I'm so happy to get you on the stream. Normally, this time we'd both be getting ready to travel to New York and be preparing for the US Open. And just not happening this year.
No, it's happening, but not with us.
Not with us. But interestingly, you for the last week have been covering the Western and Southern as kind of a remote media outlet. And we've seen lots of reports coming from you and interviews coming from you. So you just informed me that you're going to be doing something similar during the US Open, which I think is so awesome. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your experience the last week and what it's been like and what you've learned in preparation for the next 2 weeks?
For sure. First, I want to plug my interview today with JJ Wolf, which is on Tennis Recruiting Network. So if you get a chance, check that out. He was one of the ones where I requested a one-on-one. Generally, unless I have a story to write, I'll just go into a general press conference. And with Zoom, they're pretty much the same. There isn't that much difference between, actually sitting there. They have a moderator. You see everybody in the little Zoom boxes, and it works out pretty well. But it is a little bit difficult when it's a big, I think one of the ones I was in, I can't remember who it was, but there were a lot of people in it. And so it was very, very difficult to get an idea of how you would go about, putting your hand up.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you just click the raise hand button and they call on you?
No, they disable that. So you have to do a private chat with the person, with the moderator, to ask your question first, which is not quite the same, and obviously has some drawbacks. But overall, it's worked out pretty well. And, I did an interview with Marcos Giron, which was great because that was an exceptional match. And that was awesome to do that. And then I've just been sitting in, talked a little bit to Riley Opelka a couple of days ago. So I'm not one to do a lot of that because obviously pro tennis isn't my thing. But I'm really trying to work with the junior ones I know from juniors, and of course the college players, which has always been somewhat of my beat, and they don't really get a lot of love. So to me, it's important to keep following them, and I plan on doing that at the Open as well.
So what kind of obstacles did you come up against with the Western and Southern that you kind of had you said you had a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning. What were some of the challenges for you?
Yeah, well, part of it is just getting presentable, so that you're on the Zoom. I mean, we've all been 5-6 months now where we're not really doing a lot with our trying to go to work, so to speak. And of course, if you're actually physically there, you have a whole routine and everything, and then all of a sudden, so and so's coming to press, and like, oh my God, I better go comb my hair or put a clean shirt or something like that. So that's been one of the challenges. And all kidding aside, just to get back into the swing of things, because it's been so long. I did do that one ITA summer circuit event in Grand Rapids last month, but I have been out of this, I've done phone interviews and some Zoom interviews as well, but just getting back into the rhythm of a tournament has been very challenging so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just looked at the schedule for the ITA UTR fall circuit and noticed there are a couple down in San Diego and a couple, I think, up in Irvine or Newport or within driving distance of where I am, and thinking about whether or not I'm going to go in person, if I'm even going to be able to, be allowed to go in person, and what it's going to be like to be on the scene again. It's been a long time.
It's different. I didn't find it to be too different. I just went up for the finals of that one, and we've got a couple fall ones an hour and a half from here, which I will probably do, or at least one of them as well, weather permitting. We're getting into a point where in October, November, it's, that's a big issue here. But should that happen, I hope to go out to some of those. And yeah, the kids and the parents and that are still aware of the whole thing. And, some people are wearing masks, some people aren't, it just depends, I think, on the individual tournament, what it's going like. So.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the storylines you're going to be following in New York at the Open?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of them. 52 Americans, of course. I probably don't need to cover Serena so much, or things like that, but I definitely am keenly interested in Katrina Scott and Robin Montgomery, who I've been following for 3 or 4 years now, which doesn't seem like a very long time, but they were like 11 and 12 years old at the time. So,
they're so young.
I've been around them most of their competitive tennis lives. Those are two, obviously Coco still, who is in a whole different category, Katie, and then a lot of the JJ, Marcos, a lot of the Mackie, those guys that have done college tennis. Brandon Nakashima, of course, has been a huge story. He has such a great World Team Tennis season. So had some great wins in some of those exhibitions as well. So
and he was Djokovic's warm-up partner today, I saw.
Yes, yeah, that was great to see that. So he's definitely one as well. Those are kind of the ones I'm thinking. I'm certainly going to try to talk to Brandon, win or lose his first round match. But beyond that, it just depends on what happens.
Right. And I mean, it's so bizarre this year too, with no qualies. So there are no lucky losers to feed into the singles draw. So they're pulling from the doubles draw. And then we had all these last minute, well, not all these, but we had several last minute doubles entries of former college players. So there's a chance those guys may get into the singles as well, which would be really cool. Yeah. I mean, not that I wish it on anybody, but
yeah, that would be a great story. So should somebody come from that doubles draw and, all of a sudden have a run, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be great. What are you hearing on the ground about what's happening at USTA in terms of junior competition? I mean, we know right now it's been left up to the sections to kind of decide what they want to do. What about the big national events?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things about not traveling and not going to tournaments. You hear about 10% of what you would if you were actually doing the job, and so I hear some things, but not what I normally would. I'm just not, I'm not very confident that junior tennis is going to have much in the United States per se, USTA wise, this year. I haven't heard anything about the Eddie Herr and the Orange Ball, but with the ITF deciding to make everything just maximum grade 3 points, even if those come off, they're not going to draw very many people.
Even the French Open, they're doing that with the French Open juniors? Because you announced yesterday that you found out that
they are going to get grade 8 points. They got some sort of waiver for it. And it's still possible that if the Orange Ball comes off, that they could request a waiver. I doubt very much they would give it to 2. That would mean the Eddie Herr and the Orange Ball would both be asking for a waiver, but who knows? But just the fact that there aren't any, when the grade B1 Pan American in Kentucky got canceled, that was a sign to me that things are really, really in a bad place. They're just, that was a huge tournament for U.S. juniors to prepare themselves for next summer's Grand Slams. If you do well there, you can really make a huge jump in the rankings. And then when the older people drop off, then you really set yourself up well. And the fact that we didn't have an Easter Bowl, which is also, that kind of a tournament, made it really, really hard for any juniors to do it. Now, I guess you don't lose points, but there's a whole a whole generation of people. They're not giving them another year. They're not saying, oh, you're 19 and you want to play next year's Wimbledon, fine. They're not doing that. So they've just lost a huge opportunity, and it's really sad for the kids that had never played a slam. It doesn't, as far as I know, it's still not possible for Americans to travel to France. Maybe that'll change by the time that happens. I don't know, but it's really a shame. They've already pretty much lost their senior year, and then not to get the chance of what, for many of them, is the whole reason to play ITFs is to play the junior slams.
Right.
It's really sad.
I agree. I mean, what's interesting about the French Open to me is, we heard with the Europeans coming to the U.S. For the U.S. Open, for the Western and Southern, the U.S. Open, there was all sorts of talk about, getting different passports and rerouting through countries that allowed travel without quarantine. And I wonder if some of that's going to end up happening with the juniors for the French Open, the American juniors, if they're going to look for other passports or route through other countries.
Yeah, it could. Especially if it is likely to come off. I don't really fault anybody for going to whatever links they need to do to try and get that done.
Have you heard anything about why they decided to go ahead and have the junior French?
No, not really. That's one thing that's been extremely frustrating. I've been able to get some information from the USTA, but from the ITF, they've just been a black hole. I think they laid off a lot of people during this time, and most of them were in the communications department, because I haven't heard anything. And they're just, I think they might be communicating with players, but that I'm not, I don't have an IPIN number. I'm not going to be signing up for junior events, so I don't know what's going on. I'm fortunate that I have sources that let me know what's going on, but it's, as far as like promoting the sport, they've really, really dropped the ball, I think, in the last 3 or 4 months. And, that's been extremely frustrating for me.
Yeah. Speaking of promoting the sport, we're seeing during the Western and Southern this new slate of ads promoting tennis as a safe sport during COVID-19. And I think, there was a lot of talk about what can tennis do to kind of jump in here and grow the game while we have this opportunity when other things aren't happening. What are you hearing on the ground about that stuff?
Yeah, part of the problem is, and has always been for the USTA, is that it's a big country. We have 17 sections, and they all do different things, and that I do think is kind of a problem. You can't really say, oh, okay, do this or that, and just go to your local thing and your local club or your local park, and it'll be all ready for you to go. That's just not how it works here. And so, I'm all for whatever it takes to get people to get back playing and to be out there playing and encouraged to be playing. But there is no, there doesn't seem to be a way to duplicate that, at scale in this country. And especially just the way the country's set up. It's states, it's local governments, all sorts of people have veto power over what happens. And, I think we've seen some of that just with tournaments, getting canceled last minute or however that goes. So I think the USTA is in a really tough position. And I think they've ceded some ground to UTR during this time, because UTR is one of the few tennis organizations that I think has actually come out of this pandemic in a stronger position than what they went in as, just because they have been able to get tournaments played. And
right.
I think
they don't have the red tape that an organization like USTA has, right? So
exactly. It's
UTR, you sign up to be a club, you put on an event, you put it out there on their platform and boom, you're done. There's not a whole bunch of hoops to jump through. There are not a bunch of rules in place. Basically, they're leaving it up to each tournament director to decide how they want to run their events, which...
Right. And yeah, that's kind of interesting in that it gets down to such a granular, I can't even say that word, but that level where it's just a club. And so instead of going through a section or a district or, whatever you do. So there is maybe that is, kind of the key to them being able to get things done, is that they brought it down to such a small group and such a, I don't know. It does seem like it's worked out a lot better than the USTA. Now, I do not understand why the USTA hasn't been able to do what the LTA did and put on a 5-week, Battle for Britain or some of the things that they've done. And of course, Australia has a lot of that stuff going on right now as well. That's UTR based. I don't think the LTA stuff was UTR based, but it's still, I know that they've had a lot on their plate with these two tournaments, and I know they had that huge slash of personnel leave.
Yeah.
So I think that put them behind the 8 ball, and I do think that some of the other federations have been able to be a little bit more creative during this time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens post US Open, right? The US Open and the bubble and the whole thing is kind of a big test balloon that's being sent up, and everybody's keeping their fingers crossed that it goes off without a hitch. Of course, we had one positive test already, but out of all the tests that have been done, I mean, that's pretty amazing. It sounds like so far the athletes are following the rules. They're doing what they've been told, and that's great. I mean, and we saw World Team Tennis do something similar this summer.
Right.
So it will be interesting. Let's switch gears to college tennis a little bit. And I mean, I know it's your passion. It's also mine. And there's so much discussion. Of course, I had Tim Russell on here last week, week before. I had time is a blur now, but there's still a lot up in the air about what's happening with spring sports at the collegiate level. But what's come down your pipeline? What are you hearing?
Again, it's a little bit similar to how the USTA goes, is in that the NCAA and the ITA really don't control a lot of the rules. As we saw, the SEC just came out with their rules yesterday about what their fall tennis teams can do. And so that's not going to be the ACC, I think, has already canceled all their fall stuff. And it just depends on the conference and that sort of thing. I think the ITA fall circuit is going to be quite popular. I'll be really interested to see on Monday, when the first 3 weeks you can start registering for that, what kind of participation they will get. But the summer circuits were, for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, very well subscribed, and often they expanded draws and that sort of thing. So I think that that's going to be where a lot of college players are going to be playing this fall. And
you think the college players will take part? Because over the summer, a lot of times we see those draws filled up with juniors.
Yes, they did, and I think there'll still be a rampage for that, because the juniors just aren't.
They just don't have anything else.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other things going on. Yeah. So I do think that will happen. Hopefully the college players learn that they need to get in at the beginning and not wait until the end and try and get in when it's too late. And if, say, and the SEC starts, they start having some hidden duels or things like that in October and November, then maybe they won't. I mean, maybe they will get enough competition in conference or in region so that they won't need to use those. But if I was anybody who wanted to play, I would, definitely be signing up for those in my area as soon as possible, because I just don't, as you said, there just isn't that much out there right now. And, there's a lot of tennis players that are eager to play.
Right. And I think it's, especially tough right now with some campuses where the kids are actually on campus and then other campuses where they're not and they're doing remote learning. So it makes it so tricky because every single school has something different happening. Every single region has something different happening. Every single conference, as you said. And then the divisions are, different within
Right.
NCAA and outside of it. I mean, it's a mess.
I still have not about a week ago, the ITA sent a letter out on Division 2, 3, NAIA. I still have not figured that out. It was like, okay, this is just going to be NAIA. This we're not going to do. But if you can do a regional, go ahead. I know we always do a regional here in Kalamazoo. We're not doing it. Kalamazoo College has actually gone completely online for the fall semester. So there's not going to be anybody on campus. Stowe Stadium's not going to be used. So there are going to be situations like that all over the place. And like you said, it's just based on the individual school and the facility. And that's
and what's so interesting is looking at the schedule for this fall circuit, how few of the events are actually on college campuses.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not surprised after the way the summer circuit went. There were like, 20% of them maybe. That's probably high. Almost all of them were, and they knew, to the ITA's credit, that this was happening, and that they had to reach out to private, clubs and any individual that was willing to put in the work for it, because the one that I covered ended. The finals were played at a local high school, so it's that's what has to be done now. But there are people willing to do it, and thank God they didn't, or keep insisting that things be on a college campus, because that would have shut out just about everybody.
Which is really a shame, because I think, I remember when my kid played his first summer circuit event, and it was at University of Georgia. And as a high school kid, getting to play on those courts, in that environment was such a huge kind of boost for his excitement level about college tennis. And I think that's always been one of the beauties of the summer circuit, is it really does kind of give these kids a taste for what it's going to be like to play in college, and gets them really super pumped up about it. So it's a shame to lose that. But at the same time, one of the things I keep talking about with these fall circuit events is this is a great recruiting opportunity for high school players, to get out there and meet some of the kids on the teams that they want to play for, and start to develop relationships. And hopefully the existing players will talk them up to the coaches and all those things, because recruiting's on hold right now too. It's just so crazy.
I know, it's nuts. And that's another reason why UTR keeps kind of inching up, is because now that's, when you can't really see people play in person, I mean, you've got to have some information, and that just makes the tennis recruiting and the UTR, systems that much more important.
Right. Yeah. I mean, USTA rankings they're just kind of irrelevant right now, just because of the state of junior competition in the U.S.
Right, exactly. I mean, there just hasn't been anything. So, it's very hard to make any judgments on that.
What do you think? You said before we went on air that you had a chance to watch my interview with Tim Cass, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on USTA's role in college tennis, what they should be doing or could be doing.
I'm always willing to spend someone else's money, though, so you can say, oh, they should be doing this, or, oh, they should be doing that, to save college tennis. I don't think that they are quite as committed as they purport to be. I think there is an understanding that college tennis is important, but I don't sense a clear plan on how to make it stronger. And we've talked often about, I know you and I are not real fond of the format that's being used now. And I heard Tim Cass say, we want to make it, we want to make more changes. We want to get 1,500 people into every college match. And that's what they said before they changed it to this point. And it didn't happen. It isn't happening. And so I think there has to be, at some point, you have to face reality, and you have to decide whether tinkering with the format is something that's going to make college tennis important in the scheme of college athletics. And I just don't know. I don't really. I have to be convinced about this festival with all three. I think it would be nice if they were more committed to Division III, Division II, those kind of things. But I don't really see that. I don't really see the value in that. To be honest with you, I agree with you. It's really nice to have them on college campuses.
Yeah.
Where there's actually some sense that they're student athletes and that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't want to rag on the USTA, especially right now when I know that they're down. They have to be. Things are not good. But I don't see a clear plan for college tennis, whether it's just Division I or if it's Division II or if it's Division III. I just see, what they've, to me, have done for the past 10 years, which is sort of promoted and like, okay, yeah, this is nice, this is good. But I actually had an idea, and when I listened to it, that when you talked about we've got to get the college tennis story out there. Well, I try to do that, but what needs to be done, I think, is the USTA needs to go to every college sports information department and say, we will pay you $500 if somebody in your system here, the two people that work in it, if it's Division III or whatever, can write a story about someone on your team who has gone on to a great career somewhere else, or is currently a very good pro player or coach, whatever. And the one that they just did on the University of Miami just did on Megan Rose, why wouldn't you have one of those every single week from every Division II school, every Division III school? They all have success stories.
Of course.
And they're not being sought out, and there needs to be a financial incentive for those schools to put someone on that.
Yeah, and I mean, interestingly, the ITA started doing a little bit of that, but as we heard, they don't have the budget to do that. But USTA seems like it should have the budget for.
Yeah, and again, like we're not talking a lot of money. It's pretty small. But I do think that just the marketing part of college tennis, I think the college match days are good. I think that they've tried to push that a lot. But I think the individual stories of individual people have even more impact than just selling the sport itself.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time and you've got to go, but I have one more question for you, and it's regarding the lack of collegiate wildcards that were awarded for the U.S. Open this year. What are your thoughts on that, especially on the women's side? We didn't see a single current college player get a wild card.
Yeah, I don't know really some of the stories behind that. I don't know anything about this year's wild cards. I will say that the fact that they couldn't have the tournaments and award a wild card that way really was, because I remember not too many years ago, Bradley Clown won one that
Yep.
way. He got in, just barely got in on his own ranking this year, but he wasn't going to get a wild card. It's a lot of it's age based. If you're over 25, they're like, by now you should be in a position or showing the kind of results or whatever. And I think I don't think it's any more complicated than that. But and so the fact that there wasn't that one wild card available that you could earn, I think that probably was one reason that didn't happen this year. But I don't know. I'm not sure why Nicole Gibbs. I don't know what she's doing, so I don't know if she wasn't interested in playing, but she took herself out, so I assume she wasn't. But there weren't really that many, and to be honest with you, when the college players haven't really played since February, it's like you don't have a lot to really say. Okay, here they're doing great. I mean, I know none of the younger players have had any
Right.
much of play either, but it's more like, we don't really have anything to go on, and so age kind of ends up being the reason for it. And that's the same with the doubles draws, so cut down with not having any qualifying. It all worked against college players this year, especially on the women's side.
Yeah, it's a shame. Well, I know you've got another commitment, so I don't want to keep you, but thank you so much for coming on, and I'm excited to follow your coverage of the US Open. It's been fun following your coverage of the Western and Southern. It's been just nice to have live tennis on TV.
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully by Monday I'll be like in a position where I feel really comfortable with all this stuff. We'll see.
You'll be great. No worries on my end. You'll be awesome.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you getting together. It was fun.
Well, it's nice to see you. So glad to see you well. All right. Say hi to Paul, and everybody, if you're not already, make sure you're following at ZooTennis on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can sign up for a daily email to get a reminder of Colette's daily columns on ZooTennis.com. So make sure to take advantage of that as well. And Colette, great to see you, and hope to see you in person sometime somewhere in the near future.
Yeah. Keep our fingers crossed.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.